My name is Colleen Elber. I am a product evangelist with Highland Software out of Cleveland, Ohio. So we drove up yesterday, and I'm a big beer drinker, so we stopped at Arcadia Brewing on the way in, and I cannot wait to have fun tonight in Grand Rapids. So it's very exciting. We're going to do Founders and Hopcat and maybe everything in between. So I'm going to try and take it easy, though, because I have another OnBase meeting tomorrow. So I talked to many of you as we came in, and I know that there are many of you in this room that don't yet have OnBase. This presentation particularly is going to talk about kind of what we have in the pipeline, what's coming with the OnBase 13 release, as well as some other things that are in development. I will try and bridge the gap and kind of set the stage for, the product or the module or the piece of functionality that I'm talking about, so you can kind of see why what's new makes a difference. But if you're not sure, raise your hand. Hopefully the vision of this presentation is to let you know that we've got a lot in the works at Highland Software across our product line. And hopefully you'll see a few things in here, even though I'll just be giving you a little snippet or a little nugget that kind of piques your interest. But before I get started and go through what I have to present in terms of PowerPoint, and then if we have some time to kind of maybe showcase the software a little bit, I do have a demo prepared, so we could do some demo if we have time. I wasn't necessarily planning on it, but because we have so many people that really haven't seen the software as much as they would have liked, we can jump into that as well. But before I begin, is there anything in particular, whether it's kind of functional category or product or module, that you would like to hear more about? Anything in particular? Okay, and will that IDock Creator? Oh, that's not an OnBase product, sorry. Shoot. Okay, we could do some full text search, talking about some full text search capabilities. I heard a little bit of workflow, that some of you are using workflow, so we can talk about some of that stuff. We'll talk about what's maybe new in Capture, so scanning and indexing documents into OnBase. We'll do a little bit from the integration perspective. And a big piece what I'll talk about is signatures and full text search and maybe a little bit of everything in between, just to kind of across the product line. So what is a product evangelist? For those that don't know, that is a Highland Software title and name. We didn't come up with it. We actually stole it from the likes of Microsoft and Apple. And I work on a team of 5 people. We report to the Office of the CTO. And it is our responsibility to kind of bridge the gap between the business and the development department. It is our responsibility to translate business into technology and technology into business, and vice versa. So hopefully I'll speak a little bit of everyone's language here today. For those that don't know what a product evangelist is, it's really just our job to kind of translate the software and help you understand how some of the software tools that we have within the OnBase product suite can help you solve some of the business inefficiencies within your government organizations. So with that, we'll get started. Recently, I had an opportunity to stay at the Ritz-Carlton downtown in Cleveland. It was the first time I've ever stayed at a hotel this nice. And I think everybody that knows the Ritz-Carlton brand, you know that they're recognized for quality, one of maybe the nicest hotel chains there is. And absolutely the facility was beautiful, the rooms were clean, the beds were comfortable. It lived up to its standard. But one thing I noticed about the visit is that the difference was really in the details. So I stayed there with my husband, and I have 2 young children, and at check-in, we check into our room, and they give us our room key, and then the girl says, "Hold on one second," and she comes out from behind the counter, and she wheels out a wagon, and it's full of toys. So each of my 2 children was able to pick out a toy, and if you're a parent, I'm not talking about those like junk toys that as soon as the kids aren't looking, you throw them away. I'm talking like Barbies and Transformers, so some pretty nice stuff. And that maybe didn't cost them too much, but that was a really great detail. And now my kids want to go back all the time, which is the big problem. It's like, oh no, this is a one-time thing, And then later on that night, we go out and we explore the city a little bit. Even though I live in Cleveland, we had kind of a fun night out. And we're coming back in, and we're going up to our room, and housekeeping is there. And the housekeeper says, I put some chocolates on your pillows, but is it okay if I give the kids a few more? And we're like, sure, okay, give the kids some more chocolate. She also offered my husband and I each a bottle of water, small, but a really nice detail. And the whole time we were there, we felt like celebrities. In fact, I even said to Adam, my husband, at one point, like, are they confusing us with someone else? Do they not know who we are? Like, we're nobody. What is all this? And I think that the real bottom line is not only is Ritz-Carlton a quality hotel chain, but the difference that really elevated it, that made the experience so memorable, was in the details. And I use this analogy to introduce OnBase 13. Because with OnBase 13, the difference is really in all of those details. So if OnBase is that enterprise world-class content management product, it's analogous to the Ritz-Carlton. And OnBase 13 is really about all of those little details that take what is already the best ECM integration with Outlook, the best ECM product for the mobile device, world-class workflow and image enabling and capture, and these details that we've added to the product in OnBase 13 are really what make the difference, that take what is already a fantastic and quality product to the next level. So I'm going to apologize in advance for two things. One is that if you are new to OnBase and you're not that familiar with the OnBase product suite, some of these details, may be a little bit difficult to put in context. And I will try and bridge that gap as best that I can. And if I have failed, well, good news, because we're going to be moving on to the next thing pretty quickly, just so that you can get an overview or the gamut of what's coming in OnBase 13. So that's kind of the first apology, is that, this is going to be some of those details, and I'll try and bridge the gap and paint that bigger picture, but sometimes it may be a little difficult if you're not that familiar with the details of OnBase. The second is that this presentation may feel a little bit like a litany, and this, and this, and this. And that's because it is. We have a large product line with over 200 different product modules and components. And I'm not covering all of them, certainly. You don't have to, get nervous. But there will be a lot of, okay, and in this project, we added this, and in this, and in this. And if it feels like a little bit of a litany, that's because it is. So I apologize. So I asked many of you what version of OnBase you were on. Some people didn't know, and that's okay. I heard a lot of 10, a little bit of 11. Some of you are thinking about OnBase, or you've purchased it, but you haven't yet deployed. The current shipping version of OnBase is OnBase 12 Service Pack 3, and we are right on the heels about to release OnBase 13. And as Bill Premer, our CEO, said this morning, we'll probably do that within the next couple weeks. From a training and education and a real cross-product overview of what's new in OnBase 13, I can tell you that my team, who does a lot of that training, has scheduled all of our customer-facing webinars for the 4th week in July. And you can get all of that product information on hyland.com/community. And if you are not a registered community user, I definitely encourage you to register for community. This is where you'll find out about everything OnBase, from the products to the solutions to what's new and everything in between. So OnBase 13 will probably be released late June or early July of 2013. And the numbers always correspond with the year in which the software was released. So if you're on 10 or 11, you know that you've got the latest and greatest OnBase as of 2010, 2011, etc. So just kind of a way to think about where the software that you're on was last kind of developed from a Hyland software perspective. Our client and our configuration, all of our clients have a new look and feel in OnBase 13, a little bit more modern, a little bit more fresh face. For those that are familiar with the OnBase product icons, you'll see that these all have a new look and feel as well, stolen from our kind of flagship client, our OnBase Unity client. And as a product evangelist for Unity, I feel like everybody's stealing my look and feel. Everybody wants to go Unity. But you'll see a brand new look and feel to OnBase in 13. So a lot of times we get asked the questions, what is ECM? Enterprise Content Management, Electronic Content Management. What is OnBase, and how do you define that? ECM means many things to many different people. And so to kind of put a framework around what content management is, what OnBase is, we've kind of subdivided the product into 6 product categories. And this is how I've shaped the presentation today, but this is also a framework for your ECM solution, and something that you should always have in mind. How am I capturing content and getting that into the system? Is it scanning paper? Is it having employees or constituents complete electronic forms? Is it importing Word documents and PDFs and images that are exported from other systems or created by our employees? And am I completing these capture tasks with the least amount of data entry possible? Am I automating these capture processes as much as I possibly can? And am I using the capture tools that I've purchased? Am I sharing that software with potentially other departments or agencies within my organization? Then we process that content. We bring it into OnBase to do something with it. And a lot of time, many of our solutions start out as a basic scan, store, retrieve. And that's okay. That's a great place to start. Let's get our content digital. Let's make it easy to find for our users. But the beauty of OnBase is that it can do some of the work for the user. Before we bring them into the picture, before we bring them into the process, before we have to get them involved, we can ensure that all of the information is complete and accurate, that we have all the documents that we need, that we have all the data that we need. The system can do some of the work. And then at which point in time, we need the user involvement. They want to access the content. They need to find that contract or that request that has been submitted and processed in OnBase. We let them find that information in the interface or in the application that makes the most sense to them. For some people, that's a web browser. For other people, it's on their mobile device. For some, it's in Microsoft Outlook or Lotus Notes. They can stay within that email client. For others, it's their case management system, or it's another line of business system or homegrown application within that organization, so that I can remain within my preferred interface and access content from OnBase as it makes sense. So you don't have to force the users into a brand new application. You can give them what fits for their role and for their style of work. So now, someone who's on the go or just out of the office, even while disconnected or on an iPad, can access content in the OnBase system. So they get a phone call, they've got that information at their fingertips. They get an email with a question, they can find that answer in OnBase without ever leaving that application. And then, of course, we even heard this morning in our keynote, we integrate with other systems. We recognize that OnBase is not the only system within your organization, and that it needs to accept information and even transfer data back and forth between two systems, sharing that information across platforms, so that the data and the content and the information across these two systems is always in sync. And then we can measure. You know, you can't improve if you can't measure. So we have many tools and reports out of the box that give visibility into your system, into your business, and into your processes. You know, many times, many of your agencies receive funding from the government based on how many applications for benefits from constituents are processed in a certain amount of time. Well, this gives indications into how much you're processing, what busy times are, how many applications you have stuck in a queue and for how long, how many different requests are coming in on a monthly or yearly basis, or how many of the workers are processing applications and how fast. So we can give those measurements into the health of the processes and the systems. And then finally, we store. And you'll actually see that we put that last. Of course, you know, from a technical perspective, the first thing we do once we capture is that we store it in OnBase. And that system is secure, but it also has a native records management component. And the reason that we put storage last is that we can manage a document through the entirety of its life cycle, from the initiation of that request, through all of the different processes, making it available in other systems, and then finally, at the end of, let's say, that case file or that application request or that permit has expired, we can lock it down and initiate the start of records retention management. And we can do that all within one single system on one platform, which is OnBase. You'll also see these same categories on Hyland.com, as well as Hyland.com/community. Sometimes you know what different products or modules within the suite you have, and you can click on them to find more information. But if you want to see just what we can do within the capture space, you can use these categories to filter on Hyland.com and within community to kind of get some quick snapshots of what we have available in terms of reporting or in terms of storage, or what other line of business systems do we natively integrate with. You'll find that on Hyland.com/community. All right, so in our 6 categories, I'm going to start with capture. And this is how we get documents into the system. And if there's 2 things I want you to walk away with, it's this in the capture session. First, you want to accomplish your capture with the least amount of manual document identification and keyword indexing possible. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, if you've got some of our capture products today, or even if you've looked at them before or in the past, I want you to take another look at our capture offerings, because we have a lot of different tools to help accomplish the first goal, which is to minimize that end user data entry. So we start with OnBase Advanced Capture, and this is our document classification and identification or forms processing tool. What this allows you to do is to take the documents potentially that you generate, such as an application for benefits, and bring that back in, and we can automatically identify the type of document. We can extract data from that form and use it to not only index that content into OnBase, but also to feed other systems within your organization. And we have had a huge increase in functionality from OnBase 8.2 to OnBase 13. So if you have documents or templates or forms or applications pieces of paper that you generate that come back to you that you want to scan and image and get into the OnBase system, Advanced Capture is a great solution, and I encourage you to take another look at it. An evolution of our Advanced Capture product is a new module that we're releasing in OnBase 13 that is specifically designed to capture invoices and index invoices. It doesn't require any templates whatsoever. So you think of the hundreds or thousands of vendors that your agency works with. If you can get those templates, if you can get those invoices and scan them into OnBase, you don't ever need to configure a template to capture that automatically. This actually comes pre-configured and pre-designed specifically to work with invoices. So for example, when you're looking at an invoice from one of your vendors, we can identify different tags on that invoice, such as invoice number or invoice pound or invoice number or date or amount. We can even use different tags or load data from your line of business system to identify, oh, this was from ABC Supply Company. That matches vendor 103. Let's bring it into the system. We can extract all the data from the invoice, capture the invoice into OnBase, and even update the line of business system, the purchasing, the accounting system, the payment system with that same information. So bottom line here, we have a great tool to automatically capture and process and index and extract data from invoices. As part of this solution, both Advanced Capture and our Intelligent Capture for AP, we have a new solution which is Interactive Data Capture. So this is a tool for those manual indexers, for the people that are maybe going to get those exceptions or are going to get the documents that we couldn't automatically identify, and give them a tool to help this. So this one I'm really excited about, because what it does is that it automatically OCRs this document on load. And there's a couple different ways in which we aid the user in doing this manual indexing. The first is that you can see I have PO number here, and it's found PO number on my document. As I start to type in that keyword value, it automatically finds the value on the document, and it helps me complete it. So if there had been multiple areas or multiple numbers on this document that had or started with 102, it would actually almost create a little drop-down data set for me to select between those two values. So a great way to help our manual indexers, and that's the first way. The second is that I can double-click on the text, and it will populate the keyword field. I can even take my mouse and drag it across that document, and it will populate the keyword field. So for anyone that is doing manual indexing, whether it's all manual indexing or whether it's just managing some of those exceptions in the Capture product, a great tool within our Unity client to aid that indexing process. So a really nice advancement there, and we're really excited about the addition of Interactive Data Capture to the product. We also have automated redaction, not necessarily a new module, but great for the public record request that comes in, where we can automate the process of taking a document and blacking out or redacting some of that sensitive information, whether it's account number or social security number or victim name or address. We can do that in an automated fashion with or without a manual review. So that record request comes in, we want to do some of this automated redaction to block out that sensitive information so that we can make these records available. We can automate that process for you within OnBase. Yes?
Is that based on where it's found on the form, or do you have a search and replace, like, if you put in a name and it's going to be throughout a document, will it search and find it and black it out there?
It can do both. And then finally, within the capture space, we recently acquired a capture company out of Tampa. You heard about that earlier, called AnyDock. And this is just a nice addition to the OnBase Capture portfolio. Again, it is really well equipped to do data extraction, to feed OnBase or any other system, specifically around any of that line item detail on some of those forms. They have a really advanced capture process that helps get that data off the documents and feed that system. And whether it's OnBase Advanced Capture or the AnyDock tool that makes the most sense for you, we have to take a look at the documents and the data that you're looking to extract and where you want it to go and what you want to do with it, and that's exactly where ImageSoft will come in and help determine that. But again, as we wrap up this capture session, it's, what are you doing today in terms of manual indexing, and how can we reduce that with some of these advanced products? And then, taking another look, I think, at some of these tools. So next we move to process. Yeah, absolutely, on the capture.
Kofax or Twain behind those?
You don't need Kofax at all, so these are all native OnBase components to do that capture. Kofax would be another alternative, I think, in the overall capture suite, where maybe you would go Kofax, maybe you'd go AnyDock, maybe you would go some of the OnBase Advanced Capture. ImageSoft would work with you to determine which of those capture products makes the most sense for you. And I think there's advantages and disadvantages of all of them. Any other questions on capture in general? Okay, very good. So now we have the documents captured and we want to do something with it. And this next topic that I'm going to bring up, part of me wants to put it with the capture section and part of me wants to put it with the process section. So we talked about all of those forms and how we can image them and how we can extract that data. Well, what if we could take it one step further, and instead of having someone fill out a paper form for us to capture, we had them fill out that form or that request electronically. We've all been there. We've all completed or filled out our personal information on some sort of website or request or registration or application. Well, OnBase has electronic forms capabilities that you can use to make this possible. So forget that paper form and make electronic forms instead. And in fact, one of our large state government customers just took one agency, their Department of Agriculture, and they had 83 forms used within that one department. And they were paper forms. And they said, yeah, we could go through the process of printing this paper, having people fill it out and capturing, or we could create the electronic forms. So what they did was they set all these pieces of paper out on a table, and they picked one up, and they tried to recreate it as an OnBase electronic forms. Well, what if you're not a developer? How many of you know how to code and program and know HTML and know JavaScript and know web services? Maybe some of the technical guys over here, maybe James and Terry. That might be about the only people in this room. Well, I'm in marketing. I don't know the first thing about coding, but I'm telling you what, I can create electronic forms in OnBase without writing a single line of code. And we have Unity Forms within OnBase, which are a no-code forms creation solution, which allow you to design and build and create usable electronic forms that can be filled out in OnBase, on an external website by a constituent or an applicant, even from a mobile device using the OnBase mobile app, or bringing up your government website on Safari and filling out that form. These electronic forms can be created without any custom code. And if you have not seen how these forms work, you need to sit down and play around with it and get OnBase 12 or greater in your test environment and do that exact thing. Pick up one of these paper forms and you will realize that you are able to redesign these forms yourself, empowering you or your business owners or even IT people that know how to code to rapidly create and generate these forms. This product was released in OnBase 11. It probably tripled or even quadrupled in functionality with OnBase 12, and we have some nice enhancements in OnBase 13. Yes?
After it's done on the web, does it come in as an image and or data?
It comes in as an electronic form, as a Unity form. So it's really data would probably be the best way to describe it. So, we render it as a form within OnBase. So it is a document in OnBase, it is data, and it has the look of a form. It is not an image. James, did you want to add something?
So yeah, because it comes in as
Yeah.
data, that means any of that data entered in by the user who submitted the form is available as keywords and properties on that form for you to extract, make workflow decisions, send to other systems. So instead of having it be an image where maybe someone would have to rekey or you have to OCR, whatever they typed in is accessible as real text values so that you can really leverage all that information. It's basically self-indexed.
Yep.
Did it just update to a spreadsheet?
Sure, whatever you want it to do.
Leveraging kind of the workflow capabilities, you could get that to dump into a spreadsheet or format that data. In addition to having the document itself.
Yeah.
There isn't, I mean, you could create an image of it if you need to, but it's going to show you that when you look at it. You'll see it in a nice, pretty format. I don't know if you have a picture.
Yeah, next I have one. Yeah, yeah.
And that might answer the image question.
Yeah, what it looks like. So the bottom line with these forms is that now we've passed off some of that manual indexing in a way to the person filling out the form. And we've also created a form that's just like any other form we've ever filled out. This particular field was required. I need to enter a date. It's going to give me a calendar picker. I can sign that form. I can enter multiple line items. If I select this, this becomes available. It's secured. It can be published. It's available from any OnBase interface, even externally, all without any custom programming. One of the most powerful evolutions in electronic forms, certainly in the OnBase history. So what do we have in OnBase 13? Well, these forms can now include images. So now imagine a form on an iPad or on an external site, or maybe I'm doing some additional drawing on an image on that form in addition to filling out all of my information. So this is what that form would look like, one example of what that form would look like from any interface. I filled out my information, I've made some selections. Well, new in 13, so think of anyone applying for any type of permit or application or inspection. Maybe some constituent in the city wants to report something on their street, whether it's a fallen tree or an overflowing sewer, or it's just someone that is applying for a position at the organization. They're applying for a job. They can fill out that form, and we can even attach an image to that form so they can upload supporting documentation while they're completing this form. And here's what that looks like. They just browse to the location of the form, let's say on their computer or even on their mobile device. Maybe they took a picture from their phone and they have that image on their phone and they're filling out this form letting you know that there's, they're reporting some problem in the city. They can attach that photo and submit that form right from their mobile device. Here's what it looks like. They would browse to the location. They would click submit. And then once that document is there, and once this form is in OnBase, we've got the form, and we also have the link stored on that form to the attached document in OnBase. We also have a native signature component. This was new in OnBase 12. We made some improvements in 13 that allow a user to sign with a mouse, a stylus, even on an iPad with their finger. They can conduct a native signature component. This was new in OnBase 12. We made some improvements in 13 that allow a user to sign with a mouse, a stylus, even on an iPad with their finger. They can conduct that native signature component. This was new in OnBase 12. We made some improvements in 13 that allow a user to sign with a mouse, a stylus, even on an iPad with their finger. They can conduct that signatures, the ability to sign images and PDFs now in 13 in OnBase and the Unity client. So whether that's a contract or any kind of request, signatures can be facilitated in OnBase Unity on images and PDFs, signing with a mouse, a signature pad, or even applying a stored signature. And as we heard a little bit from Bill this morning, we also now have signature integrations in the cloud where the employee could sign in OnBase, PDF or image, and then workflow, OnBase workflow would send this packet or this contract that needs to be signed into the cloud, let the third party know that they need to come in and sign it, and then we bring it back into OnBase, facilitating both sides of the signature component, all while keeping the document electronic. Because what we were hearing all the time was, yeah, I bring the content into OnBase and then I'm printing it out to get the signatures and scanning it back in. So now we're capturing all sides of the signature, both internal employees and external, like let's say a vendor or a supplier, all electronic. And all of these are configured client-side. So a business user can configure how these signatures and where they're assigned to the document themselves. Also within the process, we hear many of you are using workflow. We have a lot of smaller workflow enhancements in OnBase 13, but in OnBase 12, we released our Workflow Studio, which is a whole new way to configure workflows within OnBase. It brings the best of workflow configuration, which is all still available, and OnBase or Workflow Studio now acts as your assistant to configure these workflows. And in 13, I bring this up because we are making a name change from Workflow Studio to OnBase Studio as we move more non-workflow configurations into the studio. But for those that haven't seen it, this is actually OnBase 12. This is how you design your workflow processes. So whether it's the forms or the signatures or the workflow, you do not have to be a developer or write a single line of code to automate some of these processes, from data capture all the way through final processing. So it's got a nice tab-driven interface like Office or Outlook. For those of you that are familiar with workflow configuration, this kind of tree view remains the same. We have that visual, Visio-like process flow, create your paths. We have all of my activities, my rules and actions as documents and data are routed. And we also have that assistant capability, the doctor results. As I'm building this workflow, Workflow Studio will let me know where maybe I have a misconfiguration or more work to do. In fact, the whole of Studio is actually full of visual notifications that help the user as they're building that workflow process. And we kind of nicknamed this the workflow or the process assistant because it helps that administrator develop those workflow processes. We heard a little bit about our WorkView Case Manager product. So many of you today are probably doing case management. In fact, I bet you all are. Well, if this sounds like you have an Access database that's housing data, you have an Excel spreadsheet that is being used for more than just numbers, you have some sort of homegrown application that you're trying to design to manage your case, then WorkView Case Manager could potentially be a solution for you. It provides a 360-degree view of that case file, and it leverages the OnBase repository. So it's taking advantage of the documents and the processes and the infrastructure that you already have in place, yet it allows that caseworker to make the decisions to manage that unstructured process. So whether it's employee onboarding, or it's permitting or inspections, I understand that there are a lot of point solutions out there that do these kind of snippets of case management really well. But taking a single solution just to fill that hole isn't necessarily in your best interest when you can leverage the OnBase platform that you already have and share and use this one WorkView Case Manager tool to essentially design case management applications for multiple different departments or entities, from Health and Human Services to permitting and inspections to the HR department. And it brings together data, documents, people, processes, and it leverages things like workflow and full text search. And it even integrates with Outlook to send notifications and add tasks to calendar so that caseworker can really manage that complete process. And this is just a quick snippet of something new added in 13, which is those filter dashboards that shows maybe all of my different cases and where they are in stages of completion. So this could be all my different employees that I'm onboarding and what steps still need to be completed, or all of the different case files that I'm managing and where they happen to be at. Finally, within the process category, I want to briefly talk about document knowledge transfer, or what we call DKT, with tests and surveys. This is our policy and procedure administration solution. And what it allows you to do is to distribute to employees required reading documents. These could be employee manuals, they could be compliance or safety materials, they could be training materials. It's a way for you to automate the distribution and the tracking of required reading documents for compliance purposes, or even training materials as you onboard new employees. You know, the workforce is constantly changing, whether it's a group that's headed to retirement, or whether it's just, change of staff as, work and life progress. There's this constant need to educate the workforce. And our document knowledge transfer solution allows you to do that for the entire organization. New in 13 to this existing component, we now have the ability to test user comprehension as part of this process. So you can see the employee is at the center of this solution. And then we have the administrator that's going to distribute the document, whether it's a handbook, a video that they need to watch, a training brochure, and we can pair that with a test. So not only are we giving them the information and putting the accountability on that individual employee to read the material and sign off on it, minimizing that, organizational risk that somebody's not doing the right thing or following the right procedure, but we're also able to test their comprehension to ensure that the most important points from those materials get across to the employee. The employee reads the document, takes the test, the administrator gets the results of that test. Did they pass? Did they fail? How many did they get right? Did they get wrong? And bonus, we can generate a test certificate of completion, which is a document in OnBase that can be routed through workflow, sent to them, to their manager, or even automatically added to their employee file so we can keep track of all of the different training and certification that they have seen. So I want to give you a quick example with a handbook. The user gets the document, and in fact, they have one view of all of the different training materials that have been assigned to them. So they open up the handbook, they get an email that says they have something new, they review that document, they click the acknowledge button at the top there. It gives them another chance. Do you agree with this document? All this text is customizable. We ask them to re-authenticate and re-enter their password. This can be even facilitated over the web by your employees. They can re-enter that password, their network password, their OnBase password, whatever method of authentication you use to ensure we've got the right person reading the document. Now they're going to be tested on the material. We can provide them with true, false, multiple choice, multi-select questions. They go through the test. We give them the results. We can even include why that answer was right or wrong. They're back to the document. They can reference this document at any time. They can also reference that test. And then finally, behind the scenes, we generate that certificate of completion. So you think of probably many different departments are all managing this process in a different way. A lot of times they're passing out manuals, emailing things, tracking in spreadsheets, bring both the distribution and the tracking of who's read what into OnBase. All of these tests and the distribution of documents is all, again, done client-side. You don't need to be an administrator or in configuration to complete those particular tasks. So now we have now we have captured and we have processed. Now we're going to access. The first thing is kind of a small but mighty enhancement in OnBase 13, and it's the ability to set a date in the future to disable a user account. Could be an auditor that you want to give short-term access to, could be an intern that you want to give short-term access to the OnBase system. Set the date in the future as you're setting up that user account to disable a user from using OnBase, a nice security feature. For those that are using our web server or our browser-based solution, a couple nice enhancements in web. First is performance improvements. We have our HTML flavor of the web client, which is zero footprint. We also have our slightly more robust ActiveX version. Well, those controls that are on the machine are now 50% smaller. We're down to a single ActiveX control and a couple DLLs. And we now support IE 10, Safari 517 and 6, and then Firefox 17 ESR. So cross-browser compatible in our web client. We also, and this is great for government organizations, comply or conform to Section 508 requirements to improve usability for those that are impaired. And actually we support that JAWS reader, which can actually read the text on the screen aloud to that particular employee. We are not certified to 508 requirements, but we do comply with them, and we do support that JAWS reader if you need to support impaired employees. So next we move to the Unity client. This is our smart client platform. It is a desktop application that is installed on the workstation that has that server backend. Three major groups of enhancements. First is just in performance. It is now faster. It uses less memory. It is a client that communicates to the server. Just to give you an example of how much faster, we are sending 70% less data across the pipe between the client and the server, just improving performance for that user. Now, if you haven't seen Unity before, this is our desktop client, an alternate view into OnBase, and this is our personal page. Essentially what it allows the user to do is to customize their own OnBase experience. There's a document I reference all the time, a search I conduct all the time, a workflow queue that I'm responsible for processing. I can create little tiles, just like you would send a shortcut to your desktop. You could create little tiles on a dashboard so that every time you log into OnBase, everything that user needs is available to them right on that dashboard, from forms to queues to information. We released this in OnBase 12. We've made some nice enhancements in 13. You can change the color of those tiles. You can rename those tiles. You can give instructions on the tile. This is a document I want to come back to. This is a result set of everything that's unpaid within the last 30 days. You can personally configure those tiles. You can set that upload or file import tile to default to a certain document or content type so that you don't have to select it every time as you bring something in. And my favorite is that after a user conducts a search using our custom query interface, they can send that result set to their personal page and refresh that result set. So if I'm always looking for unpaid invoices for this particular vendor that were submitted in the last 30 days, I enter that search criteria once, And I can just constantly refresh this result set so that I'm getting the most recent information. And then we have a couple parity features. A nice one is that reverse autofill lookup. So anyone that has ever imported a document into OnBase, if you're doing it manually, you've got to enter some keywords. And well, I don't remember the employee ID. I don't remember the case file or the case ID. I don't remember the vendor number, but I do know their name. So we're able to now search for that information in OnBase so that we're sure that we're pulling down complete and accurate indexing information. And then finally, I heard somebody say as we came in that they use Virtual Print Driver. Our ability from any application to select File, Print, and print a document into OnBase, we now have the ability to append pages to an existing document. Does this belong to something that's already in OnBase? Great, add these pages to that existing file or create a new one. And if you haven't seen our Virtual Print Driver, kind of what we call VPD, I encourage you to take a look at it because it is so easy, anyone can use it. If you can print a document to a printer on a piece of paper, you can print a document into OnBase. You simply File, Print, select the Highland Software OnBase printer, and it's in OnBase. We also have some more PDF support. Again, we saw the signing of PDFs. We also, in our full text search capability, which makes every word searchable, we can hit highlight results on a PDF. So now we're just like Google in that every word is searchable, and we can actually design a Google-like looking front end where users can enter both keyword, date, and any word within any document. But if you ask me, we're kind of one better in that we hit highlight those results on the document itself, and we support both text, image, and PDF, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. We also have our offline capability in the briefcase, the ability to automatically take content offline. So if I'm disconnected, I'm out at a site, I'm a caseworker that's visiting a particular home, I can take all of those documents with me when I'm disconnected, and then when I have internet connectivity, sync back into OnBase. Our Outlook integration, which brings an OnBase tab in that Outlook ribbon, bringing search and workflow and forms into the Outlook interface, now supports 2013. And we have a new way of closing or releasing those client licenses. So the story is, I'm in Outlook all day long. I need to be in OnBase for 5 minutes. If I'm in OnBase for 5 minutes and I'm inactive for 5 minutes, we'll release that client license seamlessly. Even if I've just minimized OnBase and I'm not using it, we will release that license. As soon as I maximize it and bring it back up, we'll seamlessly reconnect. And this change actually extends to all of our Unity-based products. So if you are using Unity, App Enabler, Outlook, Office, this type of license management is now available in OnBase 13. So quickly on full text search, we now automatically OCR image file formats, which means that if we get a piece of paper in, we scan it and image it and bring it into OnBase, and maybe we do some automated work to capture keywords, but we can't make every word a keyword. We can use OCR natively to extract that data, translating that machine-printed text into machine-readable text so that every word in every document in OnBase is searchable. So if I don't happen to remember the vendor or the case file, but I know I was working with this particular person or thing or item, that word is now searchable. And we have those hit highlights directly on the documents itself. And this is not exclusive to the OnBase Unity client, which is what I'm showing, but if you're using our OnBase client or our web client, all of those hits are highlighted, and you'll see at the bottom you can navigate between those hits. And we've got more changes coming here in the web client, and for anyone using DocPop, we can facilitate that full text search as well. So a big one is our mobile applications, getting OnBase on the mobile device. We have mobile applications for the Android, the iPad, the iPhone, the Windows Phone, allowing employees to find documents in OnBase, process documents in OnBase, as well as submit forms. But we also support Safari on that device for that form completion. So what's new in 13? This is actually 12. We can submit or create a new form. So this is that same no-code form that we generated within our Unity Forms Designer, now available through that mobile application. For security purposes, in 13, we can register those devices so we know who's accessing OnBase. But new in 13, we can also upload files from the device, take that, or choose an existing photo. We also have offline access. So if there's a couple documents that I want to take to a meeting out of OnBase, those meeting minutes or some files, I can take them and store them offline. Or maybe I'm about to get on an airplane. I can save those locally to my device and read them while I'm offline. And our public sector constituency web access, big for government agencies, which allows constituents to serve themselves searching the OnBase repository from a website, is supported on the iPad, iPhone, Windows Phone, and Android browsers. Whew, okay, stay with me. I know we're only halfway through, but that was 80% of the information. If you're keeping track of our 6, you're like, holy cow, we're never going to get out of here. But these next sections go very quickly. So if you're using Application Enabler, or if you have any applications that are 64-bit, we can enable those with Application Enabler. So if your IT department is heading this way, don't worry, Application Enabler will support it. From a Microsoft standpoint, we support Outlook, Office, and SharePoint. And you can see that OnBase tab in the Outlook ribbon, providing workflow and upload and forms and custom query and retrieval capabilities, all from the Outlook interface. Which means you could say to your users, do you know how to use Outlook? Do you know how to use Google with our full text search capability? Well, then you already know how to use OnBase. A great way to introduce OnBase to new users. We also support Lotus Notes, and we've completely re-architected that integration. And for those that have engineering or design software applications in-house, we now support AutoCAD 2013, Inventor 13, and SolidWorks 13, and of course previous versions of these CAD applications as well. Both storing files from those applications in OnBase, but also in the same way we support Office and Outlook, putting that OnBase tab in that CAD application ribbon. And then for those that love to do custom programming, our Unity API up until now has only been supported in .NET or for .NET applications. In 13 or greater, we will now support Java. So simple example, your website is written in Java. We can now call OnBase from that application. Next, in Measure, so how do we report on everything that we've seen? First is business activity monitoring. So it gives cues and identifications as to what's been processed, where we have bottlenecks, where we have exceptions. And the best part about this monitoring is that it is available on the iPad. So from the OnBase mobile app for iPad, you're able to access all of these different cues that give that processing time and thresholds and exceptions, and kind of see where all of our applications are at in a process. We also have our report services component, which comes with 180 pre-configured reports. And then last but not least in storage, see I told you these last ones would go fast, we have our records management, providing out-of-the-box automated retention to content in OnBase, whether it's at the document level or the folder level, with approvals and destruction options. And finally, it includes that certificate of destruction, which is ultimately your proof of defensible disposal, that I've deleted this content in accordance with my retention policy when I said I would, not yesterday because I'm going to be audited. And I encourage you to take a look at our native records management component, which is native to OnBase and not some third-party application. And also any new OnBase system. So for anyone that doesn't yet have OnBase and will release OnBase 13, you will be able to store 1 quadrillion documents in a single OnBase system. We also support a 64-bit database and a 64-bit application server, which what does 64-bit mean to me? It essentially means that you can do more with less. We can host more user sessions on a single server with less application servers. So here are 6 product categories. As you can see, we have a lot new in many of these categories, probably primarily the first 3. And I encourage you to take another look at some of the things that you've seen here today. Ask your account manager at ImageSoft to take another look at some of the features that maybe have piqued your interest. And one final time, for those that are not there yet, please go to highland.com/community and become a registered user. And with that, I hope to see all of you at OTTC in Vegas of this year. And with that, I will be around, so come up with any questions. And thank you for attending.